I'm here. I'm present.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report, where Sejan is here. He's present. And you probably, or maybe you didn't, just hear from Will on a topic that we may or may not discuss in this episode. My guess is, based on whatever I titled the episode, you probably have a good idea if what Will just spouted out actually means anything. And if Will didn't say anything, then just forget it. Just forget I even said anything. And remember that I am one of your hosts, Devin Decker, and your other host, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hey, everybody. You know, we had the ability to redo this opening, and you went with the same bit.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I asked Will to record something on a topic,
and that may or may not happen.
And it may or may not happen, like, because he got called into work, and he's like, I'm really sorry. I don't know if I'm going to be able to record it. Let me know when you can get it by in order to include it in the episode. So right now, for us, it is Schrodinger's Will intro.
Nice.
And that's fun. For the listener, it's happened. It's already happened.
Or not happened, but yeah.
The answer has already been found. It's not a quantum state, but it's cool. I like when our podcast is quantum for us. Okay. I like that. Quantum uncertainty is always kind of fun. And also, I just drank a 56-ounce blue raspberry margarita. So I'm wired, baby.
Oh my God. I'm jealous. Yeah, so, rule number one of podcasting, kids, draw attention to all of the flaws, dude.
What flaws? What flaws is it? I just want to be honest. This episode is about transparency. And I guess that kind of leads me into the topic that Will may or may not have discussed. Sejan, so I was flipping through Twitter this weekend. We'll do the other stuff we usually do, but I want to make sure we talk about this. I was flipping through Twitter, and there's this guy that I follow. I wish I had his name. I feel like a real jerk because I don't have his name. I'll link the information. Well, the game's not even done. He's developing a game where you play as a vampire. And I've been watching the process of this game develop. He had asked a question about whether or not he should just call the character Vampire or give him a proper name.
I'm sorry. Is this going to turn into a Vampire Have No Reflections joke? Because I just want to put it into this now.
That was where the transparency bit was going to be. That's how I wasn't going to call attention to that. It was just how I segued into Vampire.
Draw attention to everything. All right, let's do this.
And he was like, should I give the character a name or should he just be called Vampire? And it's like, give him a name, but then only like the people who have the manual know the name. I always liked that when I was playing like NES games, when people were like, oh yeah, it's the guy. And it's like, no, his name is Samus. And the manual tells you he's a he. So
or all of the Koopa kids, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know the names of the Koopa kids? Could you name them right now?
Not off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
If you showed one to me, I might luck out and remember the name of that one. But Wendy Williams, isn't that one of the Koopa kids?
Wendy O is one of them. That's good. Oh. I'm impressed that you got one. The others are Iggy, Morton Jr., Larry, Ludwig, Roy. Roy is my favorite named Koopa kid. Like, why is his name Roy? We already mentioned Wendy, and then there's Lemmy, named after Lemmy from Motorhead.
I will say that I do believe that all of this is out there. Like, if you want to look into why they're named what and why they look what they look like, I think the creators of specifically Nintendo America, because remember that they weren't named
they were localized, yeah.
Yeah. So that they have why they have the localized names that they have and even the looks that they have or all that's out there, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's really good to look into. I like that most of them are music related, and then Larry is named after Larry King. Yeah. I think that might be my favorite bit. So that's just to wet your whistle. But that was one of those things where I'm like, give them a name, right? Like, it's fun when characters have names and not just called generic. And then yesterday I'm scrolling through, and he asked if the death animation for the vampire was too violent for like an 8-bit game. And the death animation, when the vampire dies, it erupts in like a globule of blood.
Nice.
It's an eruption of blood. And I gotta tell you, that's visceral. Like, it gave me feelings of like Mega Man exploding when I die in Mega Man.
Oh man, okay.
But what it triggered, and what we're actually going to talk about, is I don't believe vampires have blood. Like, 2/3 of vampire lore has them as bloodless creatures. So it really kind of triggered me there. So I was curious where you fell on the do vampires have blood or not argument.
I definitely am of the opinion that they have blood because a large part of, and granted this is like late like addition to the vampire lore, but a lot of vampire stories revolve around what happens when a vampire feeds off of its own species or itself. And the result varies from story to story, but the idea of a vampire feeding off itself becomes kind of important in a lot of my favorite vampire lore. Just to throw one out there that I love, like Daybreak, which is the not Ethan Embry, Ethan Hawke one, that's made by the New Zealanders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Willem Dafoe is phenomenal as always in that movie. But yeah, the lore in that movie is that if they feed off of themselves or each other, that they turn into basically like uber vampires essentially. So they like it becomes important. Vampires have blood, but there's a reason why they do not drink their own. And I think that's also much more compelling for me. So from a storytelling standpoint, that's kind of important. But that being said, one of my favorite characters of all time is Angel, and like the I'm pretty sure the vampires in Buffy don't have blood. I don't remember now.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the one thing that I've always thought is that just being fed on by a vampire does not transform you. It needs to be blood that has been within them that gets it.
That would be a better example. But yes. Yes. That's exactly.
So that's like a thing. Like it's an infection that's thin. But there's a lot of them that it's like they're dead, so the blood has grown, like solid in their veins, and the reason they need to feed is so that they can keep moving. That's like a very popular one in mythology. It's also why like they're so pale, is because they don't have any blood in their capillaries.
Right, no blood flow. Right,
so that's
that
why.
Makes sense.
The second one, and this is one that I've read a lot about, and I'm interested in it, but it always kind of like squicks me out a little bit. And that is that when you become a vampire, your internal organs basically metamorphosize into that of like a tick. So you just become like a bag of blood, and they need to constantly keep refilling that reservoir, which would make sense as a vampire exploding in a game because they blow up their blood reservoir, like just shoots everywhere. Right. And then the final one, which is sort of what we're talking about, is that it's an infection, and the signs of that disease are what we know as vampirism, which is why feeding on tainted blood can make you stronger or make you more feral because you're like feeding on an infection.
Right.
And so I'm a big fan of combining those last two schools of thought, where it is an infection, but part of the infection, what it does to your body, is change the structure of your internal organs, which again would mean that there's blood inside of them, but they don't necessarily have their own blood. It's just something interesting to think about, and it's what I thought about a lot yesterday.
Yeah. Is this the thing that you're asking Will about?
Yeah, this is exactly what I asked Will to comment about. And
we were sitting here on the night that the Plaza report was released, and it cleared the FBI of all wrongdoing. We were sitting here on the night that the fucking new Ghostbusters trailer was released. The new Wonder Woman trailer was released this weekend. And this is what you want to ask his opinion on?
Yes, because last week, Buffy dropped in Australia. And I got a very excited text from Will that I have Buffy in Australia now. I'll see you in like forever.
Yeah.
Like bye forever, Devin. I have Buffy now to be my friend.
I have the sickening feeling, oh no, that he's Team Spike, and that makes me sad. But
he would totally like what is your judgment for that? It's sort of what he looks like.
Well,
like I feel like Will like.
Let me put it this way: if he were to become a vampire, he would become a Spike, right? If I were to become a vampire, I probably would become the self-loathing Angel type. Like let's be fair.
And we don't need to talk about what would happen if I became a vampire.
No, if you became a vampire, I feel like it would be something out of an anime of some type.
Yeah, that's why we don't need to talk about it.
I feel like
I'd be like One Punch Man, but a vampire.
There we go.
I'm bored. Meh.
I am bored. Yeah, you're also the most powerful vampire, but you're bored, and every vampire that comes up against you is just nothing. So I just
you brought up a lot of other really good topics.
I'm glad that we're bringing him in for this really important bit, but yeah.
No, there's far more important things to talk about, but also I want to talk about Jesus as a vampire.
Okay.
And
now wait a minute here. Let's connect these threads really quick.
Yes. Oh, do I need to do the connecting? You're leaving
I'm
the
sorry.
floor to me?
Do I need to do the connecting?
Well,
on
you
this
said
bad
let's
shit
connect
idea?
these threads. I thought that you had a theory you were going to share. I thought it was going to
Okay.
be exciting. Siegen tries to
That's
rationalize Devon time.
Well, it's actually really weird that you bring this up because before we get too deep into the silly part side of this, I have actually been doing some serious research into Jesus the last couple of days.
Yeah, I know.
I've,
I felt it in the force.
I've been rereading Stiff by Mary Roach. Do you know anything about this book?
No, I do not.
It's a fantastic book, and she has a whole line of them that are really good. Mary Roach is I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. She's not a scientist. And I apologize if she has like some like degree that I'm not aware of, but she doesn't label herself as one. She's a researcher, and so she does actual like really good journalistic research on a specific topic, and then puts a book out about it. For anybody that really wants to get into her and doesn't want to get into like the gross stuff, Packing for Mars, which is her whole one about all of the science between space travel and specifically getting to Mars and what we would do once we got there. Fantastic book. The other one that she writes that's really good that people might be into is that she's got a military one. I can't think of the name of it now, but the very first chapter is about how they would used to shoot chickens out of cannons for testing and stuff. It's so funny. So that's the other thing is all of her writing is also super humorous. She has a very, very, very good sense of humor when she comes to writing about this stuff. Her most famous book being Stiff, which is a book that she writes about all the things that can happen to your body after you die. Once you donate your body to science, all of the things that can then happen to it. And then she goes into a couple of things that you can do besides donating to science, but that's like tail end. So to the point, the chapter that I have just gotten to is she actually went and talked to a religious group, a couple of different people that did crucifixion experiments. So for the last couple of days, I've been reading all these things about like these dudes getting a hold of dead bodies and nailing them to walls just to see like what they would look like, specifically using the Shroud of Turin as a map. Like, is it reacting in the way that we'd expect it to react with the blood flow on the Shroud of Turin and shit like that? And it is nuts. And she does not at any moment call out their clear bias, shall I say? Like they're trying to prove it right. They're trying to prove that Jesus was Jesus and all of this nonsense, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, but she never calls them on that in person. She does make some comments to the side about her personal feelings on it, but she treats it all very scientifically. Like they have a hypothesis. They are using the scientific method. These guys are people with like doctorates all over the world that just happen to also be very religious. So they're using their science to try and prove this thing on the Shroud of Turin. And it is phenomenal reading. So I just want to get that out there. It's something that I've been doing this week. It's actually a book that I've read before in my life, and I've actually found myself coming back to because it was so good. And it's a research book, like, but it doesn't read like one. It's so funny.
Cool. That's very cool. I mean, I was thinking, like, of course, you start thinking about do vampires have blood, and you think about the most famous blood in the world, and that's probably the blood that is, transformed into wine every week for communion. Right. That's Jesus's blood that it can transubstantiate into wine.
It's not a large logic leap. The drinking of blood leading you to like, in a lot of religions, like divorcing this from Jesus for a second, in a lot of religions, the drinking of blood is seen as symbolic or important or necessary. For sure. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why. I think that's where the thread's connected. But then I'm like, but Jesus couldn't have been a vampire because he wouldn't have had blood to share with his followers.
Unless he was converting them as well.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be crazy, right? Could you imagine if the Last Supper was a mass conversion of all the apostles? That'd be
so we
cool
call it conversion
story.
when somebody goes into a religion, and we call it conversion when they become a vampire. Also, the snake starts kind of eating itself. Vampires are very kind of against a very specific religion in a lot of lore. Like, they seem to really not like Christianity or Catholicism. So,
well, the reason that they don't like that, the best part about all of that is that, like, the reason why the cross is not anything about dogmatic law or the shape of it, is the fact that they were made of silver. And silver is really the crux of the vampire weakness in all things.
I like the underdog theory. I will concede that definitely silver is definitely up there, it's werewolves, vampires, and all that. But my favorite conceit is, and this might come from Buffy, the idea of faith. It doesn't matter what the object is as long as there's faith behind it is what leads to it. And so something like a cross, where it's not just the faith of the person holding it, but like the faith of other people around them. And like the idea that if the person who's holding it doesn't believe, then it doesn't work. it's a pretty phenomenal little like theory, but it is definitely not prolific by any stretch. You're totally like the idea of the metallic like metal silver cross. I definitely have seen more instances of that for sure.
Right. And, we joked about, are you going to talk about how vampires have no reflection? The reason for that is mirrors in those times were made with silver.
Still
So
today,
again,
yeah,
it was the reaction of that. Yeah, I know still today, but it's like why they would definitely appear on digital, but they probably wouldn't appear on photography because
and
it's silver bromide that's used to
that's
do that. Like,
that's fantastic. But there's also the idea of the black mirror and where that actually comes from, which is that they would make mirrors out of onyx. I mean, just to give an example, and it would be polished down to the point where it had a reflection. And the idea of the black mirror being able to reflect certain things, like vampires, because it does not have that silver backing, so they would become really big users in like a big prolific gothic houses of black mirrors.
yeah, it's really cool. Like it's this interesting thing all around. I had something you triggered something inside of me. Oh, vampires are fucking cool, is what I'm gonna say, because I really dig that whole.
I hit the cough button. It's because I have ice in my drink like an asshole, and you just made me hit the cough button, not thinking. I laughed so hard, I fucking.
But the reason why I say that is because that whole idea of like if you have faith in the object, it has power over me. That's cool, man. You can have your beliefs. I'm gonna be over here sucking blood, and I don't know the whole idea of turning into a bat is hard for me to get into. Like that's like heavy levels of magic required.
I mean, and you honestly, you really only see that in a few different, really, like as prolific of an idea as that is, it's really only Dracula is really the big one where that comes
and Dracula,
from.
a lot of that comes. He is a sorcerer. So like the idea of him transforming into a bat and a wolf and the red mist, it all makes sense in terms of, in addition to being Vlad the Impaler, I cared about sorcery before I became Dracula.
And
so
then
I learned
and then
too.
the turning into a bat thing also then gets really reinforced by cartoons. That's the other side of that. So like Hotel Transylvania, or I was thinking, is it Mandy and the Count?
What?
I think, or it's there was a 3 or 4 different cartoons on Cartoon Network that were really famous because the very, very first cartoon, Mina. It was Mina because it's from the book, obviously. Mina and the Count, and it's about a very, very little girl that like she discovers that like a neighbor is like a vampire, and she thinks it's cool and wants to hang out with him, and obviously he doesn't want to, and it leads to it's Tom and Jerry style comedy. But anyway, there's like 3 or 4 of those, and he turns into a bat in those as well. So like you have a lot of big like influences in like on the younger side of things, so people end up growing up with that idea of them turning into bats. But then you see a lot of really cool like adult stories where that's not a thing. Like you don't see that in Anne Rice, you don't see that in Buffy or Angel, you don't see that in
Twilight. I'm going to bring up Twilight just to say.
No, let's do it. Let's talk
like
about Twilight. It's like the rebirth of the sexy vampire, like for sure, man. And a lot of people have a lot of problems with that lore, but I think there's actually a lot of really interesting lore to it, within its own universe. I don't think it's going to benefit anything else, but like I mean, the class system in those books is pretty interesting. Like the idea that there are people out there living their day-to-day lives like you and me, but they also adhere to like a far-off monarchy. They understand that there's like a rule that they're supposed to follow, is like something that you get a hint of in some other versions of vampires, but like it is story important in that. Like the only other version of that story I think I can think of is Underworld, the Underworld series. Like that's really cool. I mean, Michael Sheen showing up in anything gets me.
True.
But yeah, I mean, the idea of like the vampire stereotype, and I don't mean that he's a stereotype of a vampire, he's a vampire and a stereotype on top of that of some other thing, is amazing. So like Edward, the stereotypical like brooding male, right? But then you also have I'm never gonna remember the southern vampire in those books and in that movie.
I've only ever seen Breaking Dawn
Lee
Part
Pace.
2.
Lee Pace plays him, and he's amazing. I mean, like you get Lee Pace in, and of course it's gonna be amazing. And it's just like he's a vampire, but he's also Gambit. Like you're like, what are you doing? Like this, he's already a vampire. You didn't need to add another thing for him to be doing.
Yeah, but I almost feel like that was to sort of bring in or like bring to light the whole True Blood crowd. That like, meanwhile in the bayous, vampires are fucking everything.
Meyer ripped off another female writer in an attempt to improve her
No,
writing. I don't know what
never.
you're talking about.
Maybe no.
But like, I mean, and even Edward's father in that one, Peter Facinelli. There, I'm never gonna remember the character names. I'll only remember the actors.
I love the actors though. It's awesome.
I know, right? Yeah. So, but Peter Facinelli being the vegetarian vampire, he's the vampire that decides he does no longer wants to eat people, and like he then decides to train a brood in the same way. Is like that's also very tropey and stereotypy. On top of the fact that he is this,
all
like,
that
also...
makes me think of though is that episode of Futurama where they're like, "We taught a lion to live on tofu," and it's just a man emaciated.
Like, yeah, man, you're not wrong. Yeah, I mean, like, I never want to discount anybody's fandom, and that thing has a fucking. I mean, you want to talk about something with a bunch of faith behind it, and therefore being something powerful you don't want to fuck with.
Right. And just two more things on the whole vampire thing before I get to my final conclusion about Vampire Jesus, and then we talk about probably more realistic things. Is one, I really enjoy in My Best Friend is a Vampire, which like that was one of like my first.
Right?
What?
Nickelodeon, right?
It was a Comedy Central movie. I saw it on Comedy Central a lot. It used Timbuk 3's I Gotta Wear Shades as like
My Babysitter's a Vampire or My Babysitter's a Werewolf on Nickelodeon.
My Babysitter's a Vampire is Disney, and The Boy Who Cried Werewolf is Nickelodeon, and it stars Victoria Justice. So
Victorious. So
that's not how the Victorious song goes at all. But I kind of wish it did. Victorious. Hey, sorry. What are we talking about? Oh, it's also that's Duran, right? That's what we were just doing. But like, I really like in that one that he's like, yeah, they know that vampires are around. Just go to any butcher and they'll give you pig's blood, and that's more than enough for you to survive. Mm-hmm. And I always dug that. And I really like, and you know, Rick and Morty, it's sort of a weird thing now, but in the Tiny Rick episode, Big Trouble in Little Sanchez, where he's like, vampires exist and humanity has known it for hundreds of years. Like, yeah, it would make sense. Like, why would it be such a prolific myth if there wasn't something to base and hang it on? Like, it's a cool way of looking at it.
And like in 50 years, we're going to be talking about polar bears, and our kids are going to think those were a myth too. So what the hell do we know?
That's an unfortunate thing you just said.
Vampire truthers, motherfucker. That's what this podcast is.
Vampire truth. And the last thing is, if Jesus was a vampire, it was not the man known as Jesus Christ in history. It was definitely some vampire who was like, I could exploit people by telling them I was Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And like, and that's cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want a really good Jesus vampire story, there's actually a lot of that in Dracula 2000.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I was going to bring it up because Judas Iscariot, his punishment for betraying the Son of God was that he was made into the first Dracula.
Right. Yeah, and so you have Gerard Butler playing a phenomenal Dracula, and what turns out to be, take this as a guy that loves Jupiter Ascending, it turns out to be a pretty fun movie. Like that, it falls right into that wheelhouse.
Let me tell you why I like Dracula 2000, and it is 100% all of the connections to Christianity and Catholicism, because I'm like, this looks stupid, and then I'm like, what great lore you've brought me today.
Yeah, it actually doesn't deserve the lore that it is actually built upon.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's such a big disconnect there. But yeah, there's all my thoughts on vampires that I had this weekend. So
we should do the obligatory, like, at least 2/5 of this podcasting empire that we have here has clearly shown their love for Buffy. So like, for all the love that we seem to weirdly show the Twilight series, I want to point out, like, yeah, we know, like, that also sets a whole other precedent that isn't even, it almost is a lore unto itself. When you talk about vampires, you almost have to specify, are you talking about the Buffyverse or not? But anyway, yeah, man.
So what'd you do this weekend? Let's do the stuff that we usually do 24 minutes ago.
So a whole bunch of stuff that I like the rundown is pretty simple. Went to go see Frozen 2 yesterday.
Please don't ruin it for me. I can't believe I haven't seen it yet.
I can't believe you haven't either. And honestly, like, here's the one thing I will say. definitely made the comment then, and am still making the comment now. I like it better than the first one.
I hate the first one, so that's like my hope.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I saw a trailer for Frozen 2 and I'm a card carrying the first movie was not very good. And then was like, I gotta see this one. Like this looks like all the stuff I wanted to be in Frozen is actually in Frozen 2.
Yeah, and we can talk about it after you see it, because there's definitely stuff to talk about. But I was not nearly as down on the first one as you were. I enjoyed the first one. Tangled was better. That's the way that I always talk about
the best way to say it.
I enjoyed the first one, but Tangled was better. Yeah, so like that's where I was on the first one. Watching this one, definitely very, very much more personally feel like. And that's it. I feel more personally connected to this one than I ever felt sitting in the theater watching the first one. And at the time I was like, maybe I'm just not meant for this movie. This time I was like, oh, maybe I was meant for these movies all along, and the first one just didn't click with me. So anyway, we'll talk more about that.
I think
later.
Buy a Horse is what really threw me off for Frozen, or Get a Horse. Like
yeah.
that was such a disconnect from what came after it, and it put me in like not a great place to then watch Frozen. Yeah. It was one of the rare times that like Disney did not couple two great things together.
Yeah,
like Paperman with Wreck-It Ralph was exceptional.
Yeah.
And
yeah, well, I mean, this isn't a spoiler, but there's no short with this one. So there you go.
I think they've kind of stepped away from that.
Well, especially now that they have the streaming service where now they can get those shorts out there. Before it was in service of the short, we're putting it before this animated movie coming out. Like, at least you like to think that way. But now they don't need to do that, right? Like, they've got a way that they can put those shorts out and get right in touch with people. And that's a whole other episode that we can talk about.
There's also that big thing that, like, Frozen probably killed the short before with that Spring Fever one that was like 22 minutes long.
It was just a whole other fucking it was like an
episode
movie
of the Frozen TV show. And it's like, this is weird. This is not a short. This is substantial.
Well, especially because my experience going to see Frozen 2 was not nearly as good as the movie itself, and in large part due to the theater I went to go see it at. It is one of the bigger, nicer theaters here, but it's privately owned. So because of that, they do some wonky stuff with commercials and trailers that did not feel great. And so sat through 40 minutes of trailer, commercial, trailer, commercial, trailer. And it was just like, I don't mind trailers before movies. That's great. But the commercials were over an hour ago. Like, why are we still doing this? Anyway, so
I have the exact thing to talk about with the movie I saw this weekend. But continue with what you've done this weekend.
So just keeping in the Disney princess vein, another Disney princess movie that came out over the last week that people might not realize but definitely is a Disney princess movie, is Noelle. The straight to Disney Plus, Disney produced, though it's not a Disney Channel original movie, very distinctly Disney produced.
Sejan, are you
Anna
foreshadowing for other things we might talk about in this episode right now?
I'm just laying all of the truth down. That's all. I sat down and watched Noelle on the Disney Plus app and was super pleasantly surprised. I mean, I knew I was going to enjoy it. So it's an Anna Kendrick led straight to Disney Plus Christmas movie about Noelle, the daughter of Santa Claus, who is tasked with, through some story elements, getting her brother, Nick Claus, to come back to the North Pole to be Santa Claus. She has kind of led to him kind of running off, and she feels it's her responsibility to get him to come back and take up the job that he was born for, literally. And
Rebel Wilson.
No, Rebel
Wilson.
Group. But I was under the impression that it was a musical. It is not, so I want to clear that up right now.
Thank you.
The reason I was under the impression it was a musical is because, I mean, first of all, you have Anna Kendrick in the lead, and secondly, they put the soundtrack out like 3 months ago. Like, they were like, here's the soundtrack of Noelle, dropped in August. And it was like, oh, okay. And the music is great. And I've been listening to the music on and off, like, trying really hard to not, like, let it, like, lead me in any way. Like, if it is a musical, I hope this isn't about the story. But no, it's just a bunch of the background stuff and, like, overproduced stuff that Disney does. It's still good. I mean, again, you have Anna Kendrick doing a track or two on it. Can't say no to that. But you have Bill Hader, isn't it? You have a really good cast. There's a really good, like, diverse cast of extra, like, not extras, side characters around her that is really fun to watch. Billy Eichner has a role in it that is
Love
so
it.
not Billy Eichner.
Ooh,
Like, it
that's
is,
exciting. That's
yeah,
such an exciting, like,
it actually took me 20 minutes to realize it was him because he was not doing like the Billy Eichner shtick. Like it shows up for like a split second and then disappears, and the moment where it shows up makes total sense. Like, and so don't let that like push you away, because I also like respect the dude doing work, and the dude gets tons of work doing his bit. But you've seen one of his YouTube videos, you've seen all of his YouTube videos, as far as I am concerned with that guy. So like when I did realize it was him, I was suddenly like, oh, do I need to go like watch more of his stuff? I don't think I do.
have you watched
but
Difficult People on Hulu?
that's fair. I have not.
Yeah, watch that. Oh my god. I have watched it twice this year. I am
Yeah.
such an advocate for Difficult People. It is so good. It's just so enjoyable.
Yeah. So like I said, like, to be fair, I have not watched his other most successful thing that he's ever done. But yeah, like so just for you, Dev, I'm gonna spoil this one little bit. Ron Funches shows up, and when you realize who he is in the movie, you're like, oh shit, that's Ron Funches. You're like, yes.
Well, I mean, I still follow Ron Funches on Twitter, so like he's been doing the "Go Watch Me in Noel" tweets.
Yeah, good.
So
good. Yeah.
It's definitely it's one of those movies I wanted to watch, but there's this real issue that I have with the Christmas season,
Okay.
and it is the fact that it now starts November 1st.
Okay.
So
I feel
the
like we do this talk every year.
I know, but it's just
Year
one of those.
three.
It's it doesn't
It's a Christmas
change.
tradition at this point. Let's do it.
It doesn't change the fact that like I was excited to see Last Christmas with
Okay,
Amelia
yeah.
Clarke, but
I
I
am
don't
not,
want to
but
see
go.
that on November 8th. I want
Yeah.
to see it in December.
Yeah.
And somehow, like, the gods have smiled upon me, and there is a showing on Thursday. So this coming Thursday, I am going to see Jumanji at 4, and then a 7 o'clock Last Christmas.
It actually straight up didn't come out here until last week.
That's
Christmas.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
I mean,
like
that's
it only for the
what
first
should
time
have
started playing
happened.
in theaters out here. Yeah.
Why didn't it come out on December 6th against the Playmobil movie? Like, why did no movies come out on December 6th? I mean, Dark
Frozen
Water
2.
went wide, but it's
Frozen
weird.
2 is the answer, though.
That's
like,
true.
It's the weekend after Frozen 2, and like nobody wanted to mess with that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's 2 weekends after Frozen 2. That's
I thought
the
it came out on
came out the 22nd.
Thanksgiving?
It came out the Wednesday before. It came out the
Oh.
Friday before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So, yeah, they gave it a wide berth. Frozen 2. Like,
Well, and I don't blame them, because like, I mean, you see that juggernaut coming down the way, and like, yeah, man. Anyway.
yeah. But it's just one of those things where I want to watch my Christmas stuff in December, in a way that I don't want it to become unspecial. I want it to still have that month, because I feel like Halloween for me, I liked Halloween when it was a day, but now that it's the entire month of October, it just feels like less special in a lot of ways. So as I watch Christmas also kind of grow with a weird like spring break in the middle for Thanksgiving, I don't love that. And that's like, Noel came out when Disney Plus came out. Like, they didn't wait until December for that. So it's one of those that I'm like, I'll watch you in December, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch you before December.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that is the Christmas creep. You're not wrong about that. Like, that's been going on for years. But part of that was also Disney Plus just wanting to have content. You know, being able to say we have 2 original movies up, Ladies of the Tramp and Noel. Like, it was a feather in their cap.
It makes perfect sense. I understood it, but also it was established because Last Christmas came out the Friday before.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I will say there's 2 times a year for me when I'll do Christmas, and it's around the Christmas season. So for me, that's December 1st to December 31st. Like, I'll do Christmas then. But also every now and then I get an itch for like going to see like the Santa Claus. Like, I might put on something, you know, it'll have to be a better one. It can't be I watched Alfred the Christmas Tree this year for the first time ever, and it is an instant Christmas season classic. Outside of the Christmas season, it is unwatchable. And I love Billy Moynihan, and I love not Rob Hubel. It's
Rob Riggles.
Rob Riggle. Yeah. I love those dudes, and they do a fantastic job in what is a so nail on the head Christmas special. Like, yeah, it's something else. But anyway, the other time of the year is around like June, July.
Yeah,
Like I'll get like
Christmas
an
in
itch.
Christmas in July. I'm a fan of like maybe one weekend. I'm feeling a little nostalgic for the Christmas season.
Home Alone. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah.
It's one of those. It's like I don't want to watch Love Actually before December, and then in
Right.
December I'll watch it 7-8 times because it's on every freaking weekend. But
Thanks to yes.
hey, they know funny or whatever their
Whatever their
right
thing
now.
is.
Something
They
about
don't really
funny.
know funny. They keep canceling all their funny, but yeah.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? But yeah, so that's just where I'm at. So Noelle is definitely something I'm going to watch. It just hasn't come up in the rotation yet,
Yeah.
and that's because I've been like busy doing other things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like, I always feel like I have to put a weird caveat on my Christmas recommends because it doesn't rise, like coming out on the app is perfect. It does not rise above that straight to your TV feel, but it does definitely rise above that straight to your television station channel. You know what I mean? Like I'm glad that I had to seek it out in a very specific way because I think it deserved that. But if that way had been $20 at a movie theater, no, this movie wasn't going to fly that way.
Right, which is
Yeah.
really the whole landscape that and how it's shifting and changing, and where I become sort of a grumpy old man. Like I don't know if that's what it is. Like I don't like the change, or I mean, what I'm alluding to is the Golden Globe nominations that came out today,
Yeah, let's do it.
and the fact that they have their drama and their musical or comedy nominations, and between those two categories, 4 of them are Netflix movies. My Name is Dolomite, The Two Popes, Marriage Story, and The Irishman. And of those, as far as I know, only one of them got a theatrical release. At least a wider theatrical release.
Dolomite also got a theatrical release, and on top of The Irishman. Is that
Okay? Yeah,
like,
that was
I
the
assume
one
The
I was
Irishman
thinking.
is the one that
Yeah.
yeah. But Dolomite did also get a theatrical release, which is not. It wasn't huge by any stretch, but I imagine just specifically for the possibility of an award season beyond the Golden Globes, because the Golden Globes don't seem to give a fuck, but other awards do. So I do think that Dolomite got a little bit of an extra push as well, because I mean you have Eddie Murphy as an Oscar nominee at least
Oscar win. I think he won for Dreamgirls.
Dreamgirls, yeah.
Best
So I mean,
supporting.
yeah. So you have an Oscar winner in your thing already. It's also like it's a tribute to cinema, and cinema loves awarding cinema. Like it's just
Cinema.
like yeah. So it definitely feeds all of that. I mean, Netflix wasn't stupid, but I imagine it did not get the support that something like The Irishman did, which was what landed The Irishman in so many more theaters than Dolomite ever saw.
Yeah.
And I might be wrong about Dolomite, but I seem to remember that being part of the
I
thing.
know it was one that I never thought that it was a theatrical movie. As far as I knew, it was just Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And as in terms of The Two Popes and Marriage Story, I only found out about them because when I went to go see Knives Out this weekend, in the pre-roll at the theater that we went to, which is 45 happy birthdays long, because I just sang happy birthday the whole time through it. Because we saw a movie at 5 and Dale gets out of work at 5, and she's like, I feel like I had to rush over here. And I'm like, no, you got time. They do 45 happy birthdays, which that's like 20 minutes. But I saw them in a Netflix commercial and
Nice.
immediately thought about the two of them, Marriage Story and The Two Popes, that they were series, not movies.
Okay.
So then to see them nominated as movies, I'm like, well, I wouldn't have thought that based on how they've been presented to me. But because I had thought of them as series, you look down the Golden Globes, like you said, they don't give a fuck, but they also have that category for limited television series or television movie, which is where I feel Netflix stuff should wind up if it isn't like a big wide theatrical release like The Irishman. I have no problem with The Irishman being nominated, especially with how everybody's been treating it. I was supposed to see it, but stomach pains came up and that didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, is that what the studios had? Stomach pains?
No, the person I was going to go see it with who wanted to see it with me. Yeah, I don't know why, but yeah.
but on a larger scale, like the way that that movie has been treated, right? Like Netflix, specifically Scorsese, I like Netflix wanted to push for, I mean, for getting their thing out there for an Oscar nomination because they, you know, that's a huge, huge, huge thing for them to be able to say that they're producing something on the same level as what you could get in the cinema experience is important. And, you know, I think that's key because of what I was talking about with Noel, right?
Yeah.
Is the idea that something of that quality at that level is that's what I expect at that level. To then get to see something unexpectedly like way miles above that is great, right? And yeah, so Netflix and Scorsese push that thing, and the studios are like, "We're not letting this happen." You have Scorsese, you have Pacino, De Niro, and Pesci as your three leads. Like you're working at your Netflix. Like you have an oeuvre about you on top of everything that is going to be like sexy and savvy, right? Like that's the image right now. So like the studios, you know, one could say from a business standpoint, not stupidly, we're like, hey, you can't put this in theaters. We're not allowing that to happen. You're basically gonna just wash us out this year between awards and money. Like, no, you can't do that, Netflix. And so, and it became a thing. Scorsese was really trying to figure out a way to get it into theaters, and Netflix was supporting him and trying to figure that out. And like, it just never came together in any real reasonable way. Like he threw his hands up at some point. And so to see that it still was able to squeak in is actually really cool because I just thought it just wasn't going to get anything.
Yeah. And of course, the Golden Globes in the past, and I think that's the other issue. First of all, I will say this. Award shows mean a lot less to me than they did when this show started. We didn't do an Oscar episode this year, and I can't speak for Sejan, but as far as I'm concerned, if we never did another Oscar episode, I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I'll bring them up, but like we
yeah,
don't
no,
ever
it's
have
fine to talk about it, but
our,
to dedicate
extra time to
2
yeah.
hours to discuss the nominations and like
I
they
think
were
we did our
fun
due
when we did them.
diligence.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, we did our due diligence. We did an Oscars show. You can go and listen to that because basically it's either going to be one of two things: us shitting on the Oscars for 2 hours, and I don't want to do that, or that exact same thing again, and I don't want to do that.
right. And that's sort of the thing. Like we've been there, done that. We've planted our flag in the Oscar episode, but you know, in the past, I feel like the Golden Globes act as sort of a rough roadmap as to what you're going to see nominated at the Academy Awards. When you have 4 movies from Netflix in those categories, I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, I'm pretty certain that The Irishman will get there, and I think that Joker being nominated will more than likely mean that it is at least in consideration, if not getting a nomination. And the musical comedy stuff, I mean, that's great. The fact that it's Knives Out, it's Jojo Rabbit, Rocket Man, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those are all the movies I loved this year. Like, I get those nominations, but drama, which is what usually feeds the Best Picture category at the Academy Awards, being, you know, 3/5 of it is Netflix stuff.
I will
I don't know.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but I will point out that 2 of the comedy musical movies that you mentioned are actually probably going to end up in there: Rocket Man and Jojo Rabbit.
Yes.
You know, and those are almost shoe-ins for Best Picture, and I think you're going to see some other nominations for those specific movies. You know,
definitely. I think that
YTD
Jojo Rabbit
for Jojo Rabbit and director and possibly actor. He might be considered supporting, although you know the way they are with supporting and leading in those things. But anyway, like he might score himself a leading actor nom, which would be kind of amazing and also kind of well deserved for what he's done with that movie and around that movie. But anyway, like I think you've named 2 movies that we're probably going to see there. As much as the drama category is kind of weirdly
usually the tube. Like I understand that. No, I think that this is the first year where I look at comedy musical from the Golden Globes and say, I mean, that feels more like what I'm going to see in Best Pictures at the Academy Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the Netflix of it all, but it does give me pause. And the reason why it gives me pause is that if those movies were HBO movies, they would be in the limited television series or, you know, made for TV movie.
Yeah,
because that's what we look at HBO. But what is the disconnect between Netflix and HBO?
Yeah, and
because
it's a shame
both
that
of
the
them
Sex
are
and the City
subscription
movies never.
services. Well,
Yeah,
no,
and it's a shame that
they were
those
terrible
movies never
movies.
get nominated. Yeah, so we don't have anything to base any
No,
of
what
our.
about but Behind the Candelabra or The Normal Heart? Like those are ones
Oh,
that got
for precedent.
nominations.
Yeah.
Nice. I dig your joke though, Sejin, but like, but it's just one of those things where, I mean, in all of those times they have been put in that category.
For sure.
So it's one of those things where I don't see how Netflix and HBO are not the same thing when you consider the fact that they're both subscription. And if what you're going to tell me is the cable company of it all, Verizon around here, and I know other cable companies have partnered with Netflix so that straight through their boxes, even though they're not streaming boxes, you can access Netflix. Yeah, and it's part of what you're paying for.
For sure.
So
but part of it is that HBO and the cable companies, as part of this, are owned in part by the studios, if not wholeheartedly, depending on like what studios you're talking about.
True.
So like the reason is HBO is already figured into the system in a specific way, in a way that Netflix very staunchly is not. You know, like it is very proud of the fact that it is not part of the studio system. And like, so, you know, only nerds like us care about that. So not a lot of people really think about it, but like it pisses off a lot of the studio stuff. So, I mean, there's no other way around it. Like the way that The Irishman's been treated this year, and the way that inevitably we'll see Netflix movies get treated at the Oscars specifically, it's going to be shat all over. Like I mean, I think The Irishman has the best chance of breaking through whatever stupid invisible wall exists, because the studio system hates Netflix. Like, and that's a broad thing. Like obviously they clearly don't hate them. They still put their movies up. They still deal with them and all that other stuff. But
you say that on the eve of almost the 5 studios, right? Because there are 5 studios out there.
Yeah.
Most of them are in the process of building their own thing. Paramount is working on its own thing. HBO Max is basically Warner Brothers, working that way. Disney already has Disney Plus. Sony has Crackle, but that's, I mean, what is that? And then
I watched Snatch on Crackle.
I watched
the
Charlie's
first
Angels
season of that
2011.
superhero. Nice. And that superhero claymation show that Seth Green produces. That's not
Superman.
Fucking Robot Chicken. Okay. But I mean, and there's been some numbers released over the last couple of weeks that Netflix can't hide, that they're down to like 40% of what their library was when they were at their like biggest, right? Like they're not as big as they once were, and a lot of that has to do with studios doing their own thing, realizing they're going to make their own apps, but also some studios just being like, no, we're not going to let you put all 7 Harry Potter movies up, 8 Harry Potter movies up now. Like, we're going to let you maybe put 1 and 6 up. So good fucking luck getting people to watch 1 and 6. I mean, it's Harry Potter. People still watch them, but you know what I mean.
Those are the 2 worst ones, though. I'll say that. Those are the ones. If I were gonna put up Harry Potter movies on Netflix, actually, I'd probably do 2 and 6, because 1, like, it starts you on the journey, but I mean, God, 3, 4, and 5 is just woo, and then 6 is and then 7 and 8 is like, I've never seen 7 and 8. I will admit that right now. The last one that I saw was Harry Potter 5. That's the last one I went to see in the theater. And then I don't really like the Half-Blood Prince as a book. I will say that.
Okay, all right. No, man.
Come get me.
but 7 and 8 like are pure fan service, and it's like, well, it's Return of the King. It's the Return of the King of the series in all ways. So like it's this thing that goes on too long, not too long. As somebody that enjoys it, goes on just long enough, but goes on very long. And then on top of that, like it kind of is a highlight reel for a couple of moments where it needs to be, but it's smart enough to actually build story in the moments when it doesn't need to be. They perfect the formula by 7 and 8. But anyway,
also, because it's bothering me and I don't want to forget it, Universal is also doing its thing. So the 5 studios by 2021 will have their own dedicated streaming platforms to fight Netflix.
Yeah. Well, and that gets weird and squishy too, because I think Universal is now partly owned by Disney, and I know that is actually true because the Dolittle movie that's coming out, despite being produced by a bunch of Disney people, for lack of a better word, producers and creators and all that. On top of that, they're pushing it with all of the Disney aspects of, hey, from the creators of Maleficent and Alice in Wonderland, but it's a Universal picture.
So that's marketing. Marketing's going to get you there however they can.
That's true, but it's it'd be weird. I don't, if I were Disney, and Disney's pretty powerful, I wouldn't be too cool with somebody using our shit to market their movie.
That's
You know
true.
what I
I
mean?
get where you're coming from. You're
Unless
not wrong.
unless that money was gonna get to me eventually. You know what I mean? Like so so anyway, so yeah, the whole studio system is incestuous and weird and fucky, and Netflix never wanted to be a part of it. Has been very adamant about not wanting to be a part of it, and because of that, they're now starting to suffer the consequences, where they're going to be left out of things. And they're not coming out and saying anything. They're not being like bitchy or shitty about the fact that The Irishman didn't get a release, and thus will not be necessarily like a strong front runner for a lot of this stuff. They're just letting stuff stand on its own. So like as much as Netflix has kind of fallen to the wayside in terms of what it can do, it does not have the power that it wielded like even 2 years ago. But they're still kind of sticking to their stance on this one, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I had the thing I thought about was like art being created, and
Mm-hmm.
you know these other ones. It feels like they're taking more of a risk. Where Netflix, like, we're gonna release it, and no matter what, we've made it and we've released it, and if no one watches it, you know, we still get your subscription dollars.
Right.
Like our coffers still get full. But the way that you just put it, by removing it, they are still taking an artistic leap by saying we're not going to play the game by your rules.
Yeah, I mean, they've never done things that people expect them to do. People have talked about like, oh, they're going to lose 1 million people when Disney Plus comes out. They didn't. Like just to give you a a newer example of them just kind of just like not sweating it. And I think that's going to always be the thing for them is the smart move for them, and it's what keeps them sexy is that they don't sweat the small shit. When they see something coming that is going to be disruptive, they either embrace it or they are smart enough to avoid it like the plague. And when they don't avoid it like the plague, they're really good at hiding it. They've had some dumb, stupid, floppy shit happen over the last like 5 years. Here we sit like 2 weeks away from when they canceled Insatiable, one of the most controversial shows that they've ever produced. And they hid the second season release of it. They hid the fact that they were canceling it. Nobody's even talking about it anymore. Meanwhile, like a week before it came out, you had like support groups coming out against it and like being super vocal about it. Netflix is good at like playing the game in a way that the studio system is pissed, because it's the first time I think in the existence of movies that an outside player has been both not interested in being part of the system and also can do it on their own.
Yeah.
They're not used to that.
They're a huge disruption to how Hollywood has worked for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I guess this is good. I liked this conversation because you've made me feel a little bit better about it. Also, what made me feel better about it was my father saying, yeah, but they may have gotten theatrical releases outside of America, those movies. And that's what the Hollywood foreign press would
That's what I was
care
going to
about.
say earlier.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say earlier is, do you know what's technically a Netflix film anywhere but America?
What's that?
The new Shaft.
Really?
It is a Netflix original everywhere else in the world. Netflix has the international rights to that movie. So when it came out on the service outside of America. So I was actually watching Shaft at work the day that you went to go see it in theater, like the day that people were like talking about going to see it in theaters. I was already watching it. I didn't realize it wasn't a Netflix movie until somebody was like, "Yeah, I'm so excited, I'm gonna go see Shaft tonight." I was like, "What are you talking about? I'll just watch it on my couch." And I was like, "Oh no, I can't."
Shaft is so good. This is your reminder that Shaft 2019, super good, especially if you're a fan of Shaft 2000 and Shaft 1970.
Yeah, the way that it keeps up continuity is amazing.
It's incredible.
But yeah, so like you get movies like that we don't even realize like outside of here are not like a big deal. So like that's part of why Netflix doesn't sweat it, is they've got such a big international presence that we don't think about in America, because when do we ever? And so like people talk about like, oh, people aren't gonna like it when this movie comes out, and it's like, yeah, but Netflix actually has the right for that movie outside of America, so they're cool. Like all of the Disney stuff that was getting pulled because people like Disney Plus is coming out, it wasn't getting pulled out in other places because Disney Plus wasn't going to be available everywhere when it first came out. Like, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's true. That's very true. Do you have anything else to add on this? Because I have a little game that I want to play, and then we can do our goodbye.
Let's definitely get to our little game.
So I was reading through just like headlines last week, and I saw a headline. Now it's clickbaity. I understand that it's clickbaity. I did not click on it, but what the headline read was J.J. Abrams explains why Kylo needs the helmet back for Rise of Skywalker. So I know that we're not Whose Line Is It Anyway, but I'd like to take like 90 seconds and us to like fastball why Kylo needs the helmet back in Rise of Skywalker. So at 55:30, so we got like 20 seconds to kill. I'm going to say go, and I'd like to hear your reasoning. Are you down for this? Are you okay with this?
Yeah, let's do this. I'm trying to think of J.J. Abrams' voice, and I can't think of anything that's not super offensive right now.
That's okay. You don't need to do J.J. Abrams' voice.
Oh, I'm going to do a voice.
Oh, okay. You can do a voice. All right, so 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, you see, it's the way that he is connected to things like his father and also his all father, like the way that he's really kind of truly, this is like my Steven Spielberg, which makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But I really think that he needs to go and he needs to recover it because he's still trying to discover who he is. Also, I want to point out that I'm just going to ignore everything that happened in the last movie because a lot of people didn't seem to like that part. So really, he never lost the helmet. What is this question?
I believe that it's because Adam Driver was so busy being in Marriage Story on Netflix, nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Drama, that we had to put him in the helmet so we could use a stunt character and have Adam Driver, record all of his lines via Skype.
Your answer is boring and probably true.
I thought it'd be funny, but then my mind was like, no, this is the reason why, Devin. The world is a terrible place.
Why. Is Adam Driver has gotten too fucking big for his britches. No, that can't. I bet that's not the case. Fucking when Star Wars is like, hey, we're making the last one, you don't phone it in, literally.
I don't know. I never saw James Earl Jones on set, and he was Darth Vader.
Oh, God.
Point. No, not point. I understand how that really works. Also, we couldn't get the licensing for Adam Driver's face anymore, so if we put the helmet on, we sell more toys. That's the Disney reason. That's 90 seconds.
Lena Dunham still owns his face rights from girls.
Yeah, I believe that. Freaking
I thought you just walked away in anger because I brought up girls.
No, for some reason, my mic cord fell out of my microphone.
Plunk.
It was a good noise, I bet.
Go, Dick.
Yeah, that does kind of feel like Tugger's whistle blowing. No more Russell Crowe today. No. But yeah, so any further things on anything we talked about tonight to add, or?
No, just keeping up with the Christmas watching. I talked a little bit about a couple of things that I've seen. New Nailed It is out for the holiday season. That was a really good buy-in there. So just keeping up with that. Yeah, nothing more though.
Excellent. I'm playing games, and I should have an announcement about video games for next week. So keep an ear to that if you're interested in me playing video games, which I know some listeners are because I hear from you, and I appreciate that. And also, go see Knives Out. I don't think it really needs the bump, but we were kind of mean to Last Jedi, and I want to know that, Rian Johnson is definitely a capable writer and director when he's doing his own thing. I loved Knives Out. And I think that everybody should go see it.
I haven't seen Knives Out yet, but Brick is...
Brick is excellent. Looper, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk to me about anything that I said or your own theories about why Kylo needed the helmet back, I can be found on Twitter at Devin D. Decker.
Yeah, and if you want to hit me up, and it's that time of year, so send me your Christmas stuff, guys. The worst of the worst is preferred. You can find me at Siege vs. the World.
Excellent. So now let's give it to Will for either the first or second time this episode. Have a great night, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.